All right, we're going to continue our study of ancient Greece with lesson 2, so chapter 8, lesson 2, and this is government in Athens. The big idea today, the people of Athens tried many different forms of government before creating a democracy. That should sound familiar. Three main ideas. The aristocrats and tyrants ruled early Athens. Athens created the world's first democracy. An ancient democracy was different than modern democracy. All right, you're going to go back and watch a brain pop on Athens and complete that quiz as well. So let's start from the very beginning, when the aristocrats and the tyrants ruled. So you heard at the beginning, Athens was the city where democracy was born, but it didn't start out that way. It started out as an oligarchy, which is a government in which only a few people held power. And this would have been a group of rich landowners called aristocrats that held the power. So as a way of, you can imagine the people didn't necessarily like a few rich landowners having total power. So you've got some rebels. So as a result of the rebels trying to overthrow the aristocrats, harsh laws were created by one of the men in charge, and his name was Draco. Every time I hear the word, I think of Dracula's for some reason. Anyway, he created these harsh laws. He hoped that this would squash the rebellion, so to speak, and they would stop. Well, a man named Solon created a set of laws allowing that all free men could be citizens, and therefore they had the right to participate in government. I can assure you, probably Solon and Draco were not good friends. Pisistratus finally overthrew the oligarchy and became the ruler of Athens. Now, he was called a tyrant, which today we think of that as being someone that's very cruel or mean. He was a leader who held power through the use of force, but tyrants in ancient Greece were usually good. They weren't harsh. It's just what they called their leaders in ancient Greece. So try not to get that confused in your mind. All right, so Athens started out as an oligarchy where aristocrats had power, and eventually the oligarchy was overthrown, and now we're in the hands of a tyrant, which is not a bad thing. It was a good thing in ancient Greece. So this shows you the oligarchy ruled by a few, the rich people. Then you had tyranny, where the oligarchy was overthrown. So out of tyranny comes tyrant, which is the strong leader who has power. And today means, harsh rule. And then finally, around 500 BC, Athens is going to become a democracy. The very first time in history that you have a government based on the votes of its free citizens. So, okay, a leader named Cleisthenes. He became a member of one of the most powerful families in Athens, overthrew he overthrew them, established the world's first democracy. So he overthrew the aristocracy to establish a democracy. So for this reason, Cleisthenes is considered to be the father of democracy. Under Cleisthenes, all citizens in Athens, those were the free men, had the right to participate in the assembly, which is simply a gathering of citizens that created the city's laws. They needed many citizens to participate, And since this was such a new way of doing things, they sometimes had to go out searching for people to come be a part of the assembly to help create the laws. Because up until this point in time, they were basically told what to do. They never had a say in the government. So, Cleisthenes overthrew the aristocracy, became the father of democracy by creating the world's first democracy in Athens, Greece. And that's how it all got started. So you're going to go back and watch a brain pop in ClassLink on democracy, complete that quiz. So here would be an example of democracy in action in ancient Athens. So the first system where the people rule themselves. And a lot of people think that perhaps this is the greatest achievement of ancient Athens to create this democracy. I know the United States thinks of it that way anyway. So in Athenian democracy, people would debate the issues in the open air, and those debates were often noisy. So just imagine a lot of people debating issues. Only free male citizens were members of the assembly. So sorry, ladies. Voting was usually done by a show of hands, but sometimes they wrote their votes on broken pieces of pottery. Then the officials collected the pottery pieces and counted the votes. The Athenian assembly met on a hill called Ponyx. Sometimes more than 6,000 men crowded into this small space. Men would get up and speak before the assembly to either support or argue against the different issues. Persuasive speakers could often convince others to pass laws that they supported. They were so good at speaking. And then, of course, the men would gather to hear the speakers. So as time passed, citizens got more power, such as serving on juries. We have that today. Athens reached its height under Pericles. He encouraged people to take pride in their city, to be a part of it. And he also began to pay people who served in public office or on juries. So that was one way they could take pride. They got something from it. So all good things must come to an end, right? Well, eventually Athens was conquered by the Macedonians and fell under their influence. So now they're back under the rule of a king who ruled like a dictator. No one could make any decisions without his approval. So they tried to keep the democracy going. In other words, the assembly still met to make laws, but it had to be very careful not to upset the king, who ruled like a dictator. And then eventually the new king took over, and he just flat out ended Athenian democracy altogether. All right, so how is ancient democracy different than our modern day democracy? Well, they had a direct democracy. So all free male citizens in Athens could participate directly in the government. So a direct democracy. Each vote counted, majority ruled. The United States is too large for direct democracy to work. Can you imagine if every citizen had to go to Washington to vote every time there was something to be voted on? There's no way that would work. So instead, we have a representative democracy. We vote and elect representatives to Congress who then are supposed to vote the way their constituents, the voters, us, want them to. It doesn't always work that way. That's the way it's supposed to work. So you have the House of Representatives and the Senate and Congress. and a representative democracy, which is also called a republic. Citizens elect the officials to represent them in government, and then those officials then make the laws. So Athens was a direct democracy. We today are a representative democracy or a democratic republic. So you'll hear a lot of people say that we are a democracy. Well, we are, but we're a democratic republic because we're representative. Okay, this is the end of part 1 of lesson 8.2. We're going to view the next image, and then that will be that. So this just basically goes back over what I just said, what is different from a direct democracy in Athens and a representative democracy here in America. And of course, men and women today get to vote, not just free male citizens. Next time, we're going to continue our study of the types of governments, and we're just going to delve a little deeper into that.